Alright, so this is something else that's going to probably get me into a whole bunch of trouble with people and pissed off. But I'm getting kind of used to that, so I'm just going to go ahead and do this. A while back I channeled something. It was another version of the story of Christ, at least well, no, most of it really, that didn't really match any of the other books. And I channeled the whole thing. Actually, I channeled it and I acted it out, and then I actually wrote it down somewhere. I believe it was in the MySpace days, and it's probably still up there in MySpace somewhere. I find it and trying to put it together. But and there was a few other books. There was a book, actually, there's a book of Judas, and I didn't read the book, but that's what triggered, I believe it was a memory. Now I believe I channeled it, but I channeled it from where? I believe it was from a past life, and now I fully know that I was there. Believe it or not, I made the crucifix. That's what I was doing. I was making crucifix back then for the Romans. Whether you believe it or not is but I don't really care. But the point of this is that the whole crucifixion and him dying on the cross happened, but it didn't really happen to him. There was an inner circle of these disciples, and they were really, they call themselves disciples in the books, but they were just kind of like followers of him. He didn't really trust them all anyway, except for two. There's Judas, and I believe Michael. I'm trying to think. I gotta go back to I believe it was Michael. So, in this reworked story, I'm trying to think if it was Michael or not. That was a name. No. Oh no, it was Peter. The one that they accused him of denying him. I believe, yeah, it was Peter. So, there was an inner circle between Jesus, Peter, and Judas, and Judas actually, like it said, he asked him to do that, but not so he would die, so that he would try to. They were almost acting out a drama. That's how they were trying to present an understanding about money and greed and really he tried to really, he went off and he studied Buddhism, he studied Hinduism. He came back with an expanded knowledge of what God was, what human beings are. He brought that back to Israel, and that's what he was really talking about. The resurrection thing was reincarnation. They cut it down to resurrection because reincarnation didn't fit into the Judeo-Christian. In other words, the book had to be the second book. It couldn't be, take over the religion and wipe out the old religion. This is the new one. So it had to be a continuation of the old one. So in that case, anything that he brought back that was not part, that was anyway more Eastern and more I guess in my mind true, was cut out of the final book that was put together, and so the King James edition of that. So in this instance, Peter, Judas, and Christ, they're the only ones within that disciples, the inner circle that knew what was going on, and would force something upon the disciples. They weren't getting it. They weren't getting it. It wasn't again disciples. They call themselves disciples. They were followers. And he's trying to get a group of people to really understand what he was talking about, and then kind of like disappear because you know what? He didn't want to have to deal with. He wanted to be the one that left a message. So his death was planned out in a sense where all the way up to the point where he actually was crucified. In other words, he was put on that cross and left there to die. But then something happened. A few hours later, a lot of people cleared away, and it was starting to get a little dark. And some of the guards were given some wine that had a little bit of sleepy stuff in it, and kind of passed out. At that point, Jesus, the body of Jesus, is still alive. He's taken off that cross. And then another body was put on. Someone that looked like a lot like him, but thinner, and he agreed to this because he was to die anyway. And he agreed to this because he believed. So he was kind of a sacrifice, but in a sense he wasn't, because he was going to die anyway. So at one point they took the old Jesus down, the other Jesus on the cross. Then the guards woke up. So shit, we got to stab him, see if he's dead yet. And then that's who they stabbed with the spear. And eventually that's the body that was put in the tomb. Now a lot of these tombs had underground passages, right? These tombs had underground passages all over. If that's in fact all those caves throughout Israel had these underground passages that would connect them. And so they were able to take the body out, dispose of it, never to be found again. When they opened up the tomb, said, "Oh my God, Jesus is gone. He's resurrected to heaven. His body was gone as well." And then Peter then orchestrated partially with Judas, because at this point Judas was outcast. He didn't commit suicide. He didn't die, but he was outcast, right? In a sense, where he ended up having to go, change his name, change his life, go somewhere else to live, become another person, just to continue the story of him, being punished for betraying Christ for money. This is all again a drama. Money. Judas took money to betray him. He destroyed the marketplace, which he knew was going to trigger the people into crucifying him. He knew, he pushed them to the point where he knew that was going to happen. When he got on that cross, he knew that he had a chance of dying, but with the few people that were helping him on the outside still, they were able to get him off that cross. In which case, he then, Peter orchestrated these series of get-togethers with the disciples, and knowing where the other disciples were, and then giving them a magic elixir made out of mushrooms and cereal. Mushrooms and there was a third one. I forgot what the third one was. But it was the third one. And as they were drinking this, right, they then started seeing, wow, what is going on? And then that's when Jesus would walk in, from behind a curtain, but still he's just floating on water and doing whatever you want me to do. If you remember, put in the book that I did, and then told them to please go and write my story and go and try to make people understand these things. But, and then him, Jesus, after the series of resurrection sightings, he then got on a boat with Mary and went west and actually hit South America. And the early days of the Mayan Empire, I think they were called the Olmecs. And yeah, they were the Olmecs. And he connected with the Olmecs. And this is a story of a bearded man coming on a boat in the Mayan culture. This is a story. But what he did was Mary, he was able to then communicate and I don't want to say teach, but also but let's teach them but make them understand about not just about his connection with his God and God, their God, their creator God. But also the Hindu and the Buddhist beliefs were then given to the Olmecs, which then later opened up their minds and to reincarnation, opened up their minds to some Eastern philosophies, and they were then able to then create those pyramids, and they were similar, and connect to the grid line, connect to that space that was. And then that's where he lived. Hey, where you bro? Good. And that's where he lived another rest of his life, having children. And what's interesting is that the disciples who wrote the books, they left out a lot of the stuff that he needed. So, example is resurrection, reincarnation, and understanding that there is really no hell waiting or heaven waiting for you, but there's a karmic life, reincarnated life that's waiting for you in the future. And understanding this will help you ascend quicker into the kingdom of heaven. But they went into these caves that were they contained methane gas that was released, which helped them to stay up for days to write those books that you guys follow. I think it's so important. So, that's it. That's the Jesus Christ timeline that I don't think anybody's really captured completely, but yeah, I was there.